All right, Dev with Crime Hive, and back with another true crime story of how they were caught. I did post about this story if you happen to be on TikTok and you want to see the quick, shortened version of this whole story, but there's definitely a lot more to this, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's podcast episode. What is this story all about? It really starts on July 21st, 1999.
Crime Hive. True crime buzz.
It's taking place in Valparaiso, Indiana. We're some neighbors that typically go out at night and kind of sit out and lounge and really just relax for the evening. Their neighbor, Robert Kirkley, comes up to them. They saw him actually go into his garage when he came home from work, and then he came over to them right after asking if they had seen his wife, Lorraine Kirkley. And apparently she goes by Lori, so we'll refer to her as Lori throughout this. Robert's very concerned because he's coming home. His wife's green SUV is gone. The garage door is open. He goes in and he sees blood, along with this strange poster board note that read something to the effect of 44 Magnum pointed at head, down on stomach. So a very bizarre note. And he's seeing some blood. He's seeing blood evidence, and he's thinking his wife may be kidnapped. There's a burglary. It appears this place has been ransacked. And so he calls 911. Detectives come out, and they're a little concerned because they're finding blood in the kitchen. There seems to be evidence of a struggle in that area. There's a butter knife in the sink with blood on it. They find another strange note that I want to read to you in a manila envelope, apparently by the front door. And very bizarre because it appears to be talking about the crime or how this crime should be committed. And then it's just left by the front door as if it wanted to be found or wanted to be located. I'm going to read this strange note. It's addressed to somebody named Larry. And it says, "They are showing house at 3 p.m. Hopefully they will make it quick. You need to get in and out quickly. The husband works late, but I'm not sure what time the wife will be home, so hurry. Get at least the computer, stereo, VCR, telescope, the bike, jewelry, and any money laying around. The wife is cute. Check for lingerie. Burn the letter, and when you are done, do not talk over the phone about this to me, only in person. I had to use an old computer, not mine. Good luck." And it's addressed Norm Jacobs. So you have this Larry and this Norm Jacobs. Police would later track down who these people are, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but they are potential suspects in this case. Police continue to look around the home, and they see that there was lingerie of Lori's just strewn about in her room. There were missing items. They saw missing items such as a computer, a telescope. There was a VCR and a TV that had been missing. Jewelry was taken. The weird thing about this was in their bonus room, there were porno pics posted on the wall. So you got these pictures that are just placed there by this unknown individual. You've got two strange notes, evidence that there was a struggle and that something sinister had happened. The bed covers were off the bed. So just police are certain that something very bad has most likely happened to Lori. They start, of course, looking at those closest to Lori. Of course, they're going to look at her husband, Robert, and he's very distraught. He doesn't seem to give off any signs that he's guilty, but that's not always the case. He was at work, and police determined that there was just no physical way he could have made it to that home during the crime to commit this crime. They ultimately rule out Robert as a suspect. Police interviewed some of the neighbors. One of the neighbors said that she had seen something odd the day before. She saw this strange man riding a bicycle past her house, and that the man on the bike just kept doing laps over and over again. She thought it was probably over an hour. He didn't even acknowledge her. No waving, no stopping. And he was riding fairly close, apparently. He just seemed to be like he was in his own world and didn't acknowledge her. And she just thought it was strange, so she remembered that. Police start to dig more into Lori's life. They know that she is a nurse. She was a president of this bike club. Police look at this bicycle club and they're asking around to find out if there's any issues with anyone. And one person, Sam Montgomery, apparently had a recent divorce, had some anger issues going on, and just was acting really weird at this club. He was interviewed and he admits that he was, being rude to Lori and just some drama that was really going on. But he had an alibi witness during her disappearance, so they rule him out. So they look at another member of this bicycle club, and his name is William Johnson. And he's apparently making these really strange comments to females of the club, approaching them and asking them weird things such as, do they want to masturbate with him? Another one was asked, how did her crotch feel after the ride that she had recently been on? And he was terminated from the club because of those statements. Police interview this individual, and very strange, he had asked a neighbor to give a false alibi on the night Lori went missing, but ultimately police could not determine any evidence against this person, and he was ultimately ruled out, though very strange that he was trying to provide this false alibi. And that kind of stuff does happen in these cases. How many times have we heard about people falsely telling police that they are the ones that committed the crime and they just wanted the attention, and it was just not the case? So this led police into a false hole, if you will, and they had to start all over. In the meantime, they're looking at that letter that I mentioned to you with Larry and Norm, and they actually learned that these are realtors because Robert and Lori were putting their home up for sale, and there was a lockbox on the door. They were able to determine that these were real estate agents, and they interviewed them. They went to their office and looked at the printer and the paper used to see if they could compare that to the note that was typed up, and it just didn't match. They had alibis, and they were ultimately ruled out as well in this case. They're back to square one. Days later, there is a report of a burned Ford SUV in a cornfield. It's really on fire, and ultimately police would learn that there was an accelerant used in the vehicle. They found gas cans melted in the fire, and there was no license plate. The VIN number associated with the vehicle was completely destroyed. But if you don't know a lot about vehicles, there are hidden VIN numbers throughout a vehicle, underneath it, within it, and this allows police or arson investigators to find this information, which can then later be traced to the owner. And they did find a hidden VIN number, and it did trace back to Lori's green SUV. They are now very concerned. No body was found, but they did find some shell casings in the vehicle. Fast forward a little bit further. Randomly, this 12-year-old's taking out the trash. Near the dumpster, he sees a strange note in a Ziploc bag. And this is a letter requesting the person to give it to Mr. Kirkley. And there's a phone number. It mentions that Mr. Kirkley's wife is missing. In this bag are some items, which police would later come out and look at these items and determine that one of Lori's bicycle shoes and her keychain was in this bag. There's yet another really bizarre note that I want to read off. It's not very long, but it's very disturbing, and it does give police more insight into what happened, which you'll find out later on. But this note is basically starting out saying, "Dear Mr. Kirkley, I'm very sorry about your wife. I didn't even know her name. She came home in the process of the robbery. She would not cooperate, even with the .44 Magnum pointed at her head. When tackled and attempted to cover her mouth, she bit the tip of my finger off. I never intended to hurt her. I took her we arrived at our destination. I attempted to shove a sedative down her throat. It's Halcyon and Valium. It's kind of hard to read this letter, but so she could basically go to sleep, and then it basically says, she pulled my face mask off. He said that he was trying to bribe her, and unfortunately, he had to kill her. He said that you will never find the body. She did not suffer, but tell the cops. The case is closed. So he basically was saying that she was dead, that he had killed her, shot her, and the police would never find the body. Again, a little trouble reading this garbled note, but you get the idea of what was said. Police go back to the husband. They want to give him a polygraph test and just make sure that he is not involved in any way, shape, or form. They take him in. He agrees to this polygraph, which again, keep in mind, a polygraph is not admissible in court for many reasons, and you'll find out even here with this case. He fails the polygraph. The polygraph is measuring breathing and skin temperature and heart rate. Doesn't always give you the data that is accurate because people are distraught in these cases. They're going to be upset, and their skin temperature, their breathing is going to be labored when you're dealing with police and when you're being interviewed or you're being interrogated by police. And so these just aren't accurate. I can tell you that what police are hoping for on these polygraph tests is that somebody will admit to certain things or they will confess to certain things. It can be used as almost a mirage, this polygraph, where the results really can't be used, but they can still obtain information from the questions they're asking. And they can get confessions and they can get information that will help them solve a crime. So this didn't work out for them in this case. They go back to square one. Now, days later, on July 27th, this is what would really kick off this case and really help lead to whoever committed this heinous crime. Hey, if you're really digging this content, one way you can really support me is by searching Crime Hive on social media. If you visit my YouTube, my TikTok, or even my Instagram, you can comment, share, and like the posts. This would mean a lot, and I appreciate your support. July 27th, a woman calls into police saying that she knew who committed the burglary and that there were missing items in her house. There was a TV, a VCR, and a camera that was not hers. And she knew about this story, and so she wanted to turn in her husband because she believed her husband may have something to do with this crime. Her husband was identified as David Malinski. David Malinski was a co-worker of Lori. So now they're very, very intrigued because he worked with her. Police would later learn that he had some jealousy issues around Lori over promotions and over work. There was some drama, and he wasn't happy with her. Police, with this new information, they serve a search warrant on David Malinski's property. Magically, they don't find any evidence the first time, but what's really strange about this case is a detective apparently was jogging by the property later on, looking at David Malinski's home, and noticed a pitch. So you've got this pitch on the outside of the home, which suggests that there is another area in the home that they did not search. So a hidden area. And so police go back in the property and they find that there's this hidden entrance to this hidden area in the home. They open it up and they find just several photos posted on the wall. And again, they're porno type pictures all over the walls, very similarly to the ones posted in Lori's home on her wall. So they have more evidence now. They're starting to connect to this crime, and they're believing that David is the one responsible. So they bring David in, and David is interviewed willingly. he has quite a bizarre story that he tells police. He tells police that him and Lori had an affair for 6 months and that she was not happy in her marriage, and that they had both planned to stage an abduction of Lori in July, and that they were going to run off together and leave their life behind and start a new life together. He said that Lori wasn't quite ready to leave home, and they had some sort of argument, and that Lori ended up just leaving without him, and he didn't know where she was. So just a very strange story. You know, when you hear that, it's hard to believe, and police are even more suspicious of him. They become even more intrigued when they notice he has a bandage on his finger, and they look under the bandage and there's human bite marks on his finger. Again, this now connects him to the note where there was talk of Lori biting off a part of his finger. He doesn't admit any harm, but he is arrested for this crime based on all that evidence that I've shared with you so far. He further incriminates himself while he's in jail. You guys have heard about the jailhouse snitch, right? Well, that's exactly what happens. There's 2 inmates that are going to be released from the jail where David Malinski is staying, and he tells them about these Polaroid pictures that if police found out about, he would be a goner. He would be done for with this case. These inmates go to police. You know, oftentimes they'll do that to try to get a reduced sentence or give them some sort of leverage with their cases. But they were already on their way out, and they ended up going to police. Police go out and find these photos. This completely opens up the case because these photos show Lori bound and abused in these photos, and it shows that it's in his master bedroom. The photos are so disturbing that police have a pathologist look at them, and the pathologist declared that Lori was most likely dead based on those photos. Again, all of this over jealousy of a coworker. Further along the line, in court, when David was sentenced, the neighbor who saw the man on the bike would testify against David as the person that she recognized as being on the bike. And police would learn what happened. They would surmise that David would go in and take Lori's garage opener and clone it. So actually clone it, and then he would plan this crime. He would park his truck near a gas station, and he would ride his bicycle to her house and wait for her. When she comes home, he would overpower her, and then he would put her in her own vehicle along with his bicycle, and then he would ultimately drive her to his house where he would commit these crimes. And I don't know how his wife did not know about this. He must have somehow planned this around his wife, who was a swim instructor. So I don't know if she was teaching children at the time when this was happening, but she apparently had no idea what was going on. David was convicted and sentenced to 155 years in prison. He ultimately would try for appeals, but would not win these appeals. And so 6 years later, approximately, on September 19th, 2005, he decides he wants to tell the truth. And he wants to tell police where Lori's body is. And it turns out Lori's body was buried on David's father's property. She died of strangulation when police would look at her body. Profilers, this was interesting. Profilers believed that if he had not been caught, he potentially would have become a serial killer. So they believed he was a serial killer in the making based on all this evidence, all the strange things that he did, and what he could have done later on. Very disturbing case, and that was how he was caught. Again, if you are on social media, I do put these podcasts on YouTube, but they're found everywhere. So if you happen to be watching this on YouTube. The podcast is on Spotify and Apple and Google, and take a look there. You can also connect with me on Instagram or TikTok, and I will be back with another true crime story of how they were caught or a different series. I'm doing some other related series that has created some interest with people in the groups. Check back frequently. I do post episodes once or twice a week, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Take care.
Crime Hive. True Crime Buzz.